Fallout New Vegas, one of if not the best games of all time. That game was something special. Even if you haven't played it, even if you've never touched Fallout as a series, you've almost certainly heard or have at least seen something from New Vegas. Not only was it special, but if nothing else, it was also disgustingly outright. The Legion is the leading example of this. How many games do you personally know of where you can just point to a specific faction as nasty as this one? Now, I'll tell you what, New Vegas is one of those games that has this rare trait. Now, it also expanded the lore of this delicate faction, and I don't think great is the word I'd use. You know, beautiful writing, but it's hard to believe some people stand these whatever you call them. So you know, welcome to Geekout, where today we will be discussing Fallout's most abominable faction, the Legion. Now, you know, let me tell you, yes, you the person watching this video, a story of my very first encounter with them. You know, I was walking along this, what seemed to be a raided town, where a man ran up to me, spouting nonsense about winning the lottery.
Yeah! Who won the lottery? I did!
I brushed him off to focus on my own bigger concern, the town, you know, of Nipton, which is currently doing its best Travis Scott concert impression, is in a awful state. There were slaves, crucifixions, and on top of that, some degenerate at the center of it all named Vulpus Inculta, who is, you know, outside setting a terrible example for the youth, uttering straight gobbledygook about how the town deserved its fate. From that point on, I knew I absolutely had to talk to someone who had been crucified. Don't ask me if I helped them or not. It's not important to this part of the story. Now, to understand the Legion and why they do the things they do, you know, we have to understand their history, which means starting with their origins. In 2246, a different faction called the Followers of the Apocalypse sent a small group of people to study that region's tribal languages. And if you don't know, the Followers of the Apocalypse are like this really intelligent group of people that go around studying and educating and whatnot. That's kind of like a simple summary of them. Their job is really to make sure that education in the wasteland, common sense, stuff like that is still very present among wastelanders. This group that was sent, though, included Edward Silo, their physician Bill Calhoun, and the Mormon missionary Josh Graham. Yes, that specific Graham. Not very long into their travels, the group would be kidnapped by the Blackfoot tribe and be held ransom. Now, around this time, the tribe would be warring with several other not wholly important tribes, and Edward Salo, being the kind of person he is, would take advantage of their vulnerability almost. He would fear that the other tribes would soon overtake the Blackfoots due to their martial ineptitude, and not long after would begin to teach them the arts of war. Things such as gun maintenance, small unit tactics, explosives, and military strategy. Coincidentally, a lot of his knowledge on military tactics were from what he had read on the ancient Roman legions. You know, I can't imagine how that'll come into play later for his character. The Blackfoots would go on to actually use what Salo had taught them to not only defeat the other tribes, but would straight up conquer them. You'd think that the world that has at least, you know, death claws would be able to fight off strategies from ancient Roman times, but then again, these other tribes were just stupid. They just sucked. But the Blackfoots gained respect for Salo. It must have been surprising, maybe humiliating, that their captive was the one to lead them to victory. They didn't let him go because of this. They actually went a few steps past that and promoted him to their leader, following him, and he would put into effect warfare policies based on old Roman concepts, calling himself Caesar and everyone else the Legion. Now the Legion would then go on to dominate the other tribes, claiming them into their army, and whoever wasn't conscripted and put into slavery were killed. Through this kind of force, his army would become fanatically loyal to him and his cause, and he would even select Josh Graham as his first lieutenant. He would now be known as Malpais Legate. The Legion's growth becomes such a threat that they're the reason for the Ranger Unification Treaty between the Desert Rangers and the NCR. Now that we've explained the origins, we now get to the War for the Mojave, where they have decided to move towards the Mojave after conquering Arizona and New Mexico, as well as having footholds in Utah and Colorado. Now with the strength of 65 conquered tribes, Caesar decided to move westward and establish a base at Fortification Hill right above Lake Mead and the Colorado River. Malpais Legate, aka Josh Graham, would lead the Legion forces towards Hoover Dam to take it from the NCR, creating what is now known as the First Battle of Hoover Dam. The NCR would see the success of the Legion, and Chief Hanlon would decide to tactically retreat back to Boulder City. Their marksmanship would prove vital against the Legion, as they would pick off Legion centurions and the Cani from afar, causing panic within the lower ranked legionnaires. This would frustrate Graham so much so that he decides, instead of accepting what he had conquered, he sends Legion elite forces after the sharpshooters, only to find out that the NCR had walked them into a trap. You see, the NCR aren't stupid, that they had not only booby-trapped their trail leading to Boulder City, but had done so all over Boulder City. And after the Legion entered the city, the NCR would detonate the traps, massively destroying Legion forces, with whoever was around after the city was exploded being finished off by the NCR. Afterwards, General Lee Oliver would then lead a counterattack, devastating Legion forces, and would end up keeping the dam for themselves. This failure infuriated Caesar, as the loss could have been avoided if Graham hadn't been so bloodthirsty. But nonetheless, no matter how much skill or time he had spent with Caesar, it wouldn't stop his punishment. Caesar would then have his Praetorian Guard cover Graham in hitch and set him ablaze, throwing him in the hollow darkness of the Grand Canyon. And Josh Graham, or as he'd become known as, Malpius Legate, would not be spoken of again. Those names were banned from the lips of legionnaires, and the low enough to dare mention him told stories of the Burn Man. This defeat would hurt the Legion, but Caesar was ever hell-bent on conquering. So by 2281, Caesar would have rebuilt his forces, re-establishing his power in the west with his now conquered 87 tribes as they slowly approached New Vegas. They would then get back to their mission against the NCR, destroying or conquering territories such as Ranger Station Charlie, Camp Searchlight, Nelson, and Nipton, while terrorizing the Mojave. We might as well explain how the legionaries themselves are seen and operate. We know how their military works, but how the individuals themselves work. The legionaries are trained and put in such hard conditions that they are absolutely ferocious. They are even conditioned the path of being on par with NCR Rangers. They're fast, strong, and dangerous, and they can run extremely fast and close distances even faster. They have a high pain resistance, especially due to the brutal melee combat training, and they have extreme discipline, not even thinking for themselves and only the cause for Caesar, with all conflict removed from their mind. They will perform any order given until completed or death falls upon them. If training fails them, their fear will continue to drive them forward. In rare cases, the legate will order decimation, where 1/10 of troop are beat to death by the other 9. This is prime example of their conditioning. They are so ferocious in melee combat that very few equal them. The NCR are even advised to just take them down from range. Even though they just use light armor and melee, they are a force to be reckoned with. Due to popular belief that they do not use ranged weapons and only use melee, that's very wrong, as the majority of the ranged weapons that are used are just poor quality. They will scavenge weapons from fallen enemies, so much so that the NCR are ordered to destroy their weapons if fatally wounded. They did this during the Battle of Hoover Dam especially. They would throw their weapons over the dam so the Legion couldn't get a hold of them. Lower ranks use simple melee weapons and just kind of like simple lever actions and revolvers. Only higher ranking legionnaires, like veterans and centurions, are often provided quality firearms like anti-material rifles, 12.7 machine guns, marksman carbines, and super sledges, are even equipped with high-tech ballistic fists to show their effectiveness and strength. Don't let this fool you. They're not good with technology whatsoever. They don't use energy weapons but are interested in buying them from the Vangraffs, and they even often have a large number of stealth boys, which the Mojave legionaries aren't seen using, but the ones in the Divide and Dry Wells do. Although a well-rounded force, the Legion's weakness is technically the amount of dependence they have upon their high-ranking legionnaires for guidance in battle. Without the Decani, the Centurions become a disorganized mess. We've already discussed how they operate in waves when in a larger force. The first are the recruits, the second are the prime legionnaires, and the third being the veterans, with that being the final wave. Every wave gets harder. Even when they act in a smaller force, they require quick strikes and methodical planning. They are much better at taking forces than holding them, as the Legion will commit the most heinous acts to terrorize their enemies, such as murder, crucifixion, slavery, rape, and torture. They will even use children and soldiers as traps. They do all of this to demoralize enemy troops as possible. The Legion's stance on cannibalism is actually unclear, but it certainly doesn't stop them from working with cannibals. The White Glove Society, you know, the cannibals. The Legion also has toleration for submissive mutant and ghouls. Caesar doesn't see such limited number of creatures as threats. Basically, he's not scared of minorities. Yeah, who's shocked? Life cannot be gained without blood or sacrifice. The Legion believe this to their core, as they hate robots. They're a cheap way to win to them. They are a bloodless victory, and they also forbid any chems, as only the strongest should survive. And the end goal for them, after defeating the NCR and their democracy, would be forming their new Roman Empire. For entertainment, the Legion holds arenas where slaves, prisoners, and young legionnaires fight one another, and even outsiders can join in on this. Young legionnaires do this for their own glory and reputation, and women cannot fight no matter what their status is, whether they're Legion or on the outside. The only exception for this was Stella, a captured NCR Ranger. Anyone who lives in non-Legion territory is a non-slave or non-tribal. This means they are not technically a legionary, and they are not even considered a citizen, and are usually left to live their own life as long as they do not interfere with Legion operation. It's not the best method, but the Legion's brutal force makes their territory have less threats, as before Arizona was taken by the Legion, you couldn't go 2 miles without being attacked. By exterminating and enslaving raider tribes, they brought a sense of peace to their territory. They do not govern or leave any governing institutions. They instead rely on tribute from those who live in their territory as they continue expanding, and this is the very reason they aren't considered Legion citizens. They aren't legionnaires, nor are they a problem as long as they pay their tribute and don't interfere. Instead of enslaving skilled people, they tend to let them do their own thing and enslave tribes. Now, this isn't always the case, as in the Mojave, you may find yourself being a victim and an example to others. Enslaved, maybe diddled. Normal people enjoy the flow of food, water, low crime, and corruption levels that are in these territories, though. They enjoy their lives and never disobey or disrupt the Legion. This all happens because the Legion only asks one time. There's no second asking. This often means that if the Legion needs to, they will make the people give up their homes and give them supplies. This means they have very little rights at the end of the day, but if they do these rare requests, they have peace, and a lot of people under Legion rule may not even see this as a massive issue based off regular life in the wasteland. It's just as we said earlier, Legion territory is also profitable for traders, as Legion land has rid of all raiders. A lot of them can travel free of guards, and any incursion against Legion land and its people are mercilessly punished. Due to the heavy NCR taxes, a lot of traders will just travel through Legion land, with some crossing the river to trade with the NCR. Though the Legion doesn't seem to care about this, they also hold firm to their beliefs of no drugs and alcohol, punishing anybody who they catch with them. Yes, the slave ranking system and how they see anyone outside of the Legion. Anyone outside of Legion ranking or under their influence are called profligates. Freshly caught humans are called captures, and these are the lowest of the low. Their only right is to be tested as a slave, and those that are male that are too old are executed. Slaves are one step above captures and consist of humans unfit for the legionnaire duties. They are expected to accept their virtues as a slave. Yes, I said virtue as a slave. That is their belief, and obey their master's commands no matter the circumstance. They are given a new name and wear rags with a bright red X painted onto them, and some are even forced to wear collars to force docility upon them. Slavery is managed and documented by the Consul Officerium ab Olatus. Basically, they typically act through representatives who handle sales, bargaining, and issuing legal documentation. Documentation is extremely important, especially for pregnant women, where slavers may perceive payments if their child is born. The Legion's relations to the outside world is one of hesitance, as not many want to be their allies. They have often been known to turn on their word and conquer their allies, and always plan to from the start, typically. After the disaster that was the First Battle of Hoover Dam, they resorted to finding allies such as the Whitelegs, the Great Khans, and the Emertas. Typically, they just turn on them, or plan on turning on them. Usually, that's how it goes, and they just become one of the conquered tribes. But as far as canon, we go to the Fallout show. The Fallout show has yet to confirm a lot of things, but the Legion story has continued throughout. As of 2296, Caesar has died, writing the name of his heir down on a piece of paper stowed on his corpse. And he sees that it reads, "I am Caesar. I am the Legion. It ends with me." Bro, I made a joke about this, and I'm like, bro, Caesar's just a dickhead. You know, there's another legionnaire in there, so he hurries up and he eats the paper, turns around, just shanks him, killing him so there's no witnesses, and then takes Caesar's crown and puts it on his head and proclaims himself new Caesar of the Legion. He walks outside, everyone starts cheering for him. He gives a speech ordering for the renewed march towards Vegas in order to claim the Holy Land, where they could establish a palace worthy for Caesar's Legion. Caesar's Palace. And the season leaves off with Caesar, the new Caesar, of course, and his Legion marching towards Vegas to face the now returned NCR, or New California Republic, where they will face off once again. And I'm looking forward to season 3, where we get to find out more Legion lore and what's going to happen to the Legion now with their new Caesar. The Legion also are seen in the show taking Lucy McLean prisoner and crucifying her, only for Cooper Howard to show up, aka the Ghoul, to save her. He would lie to them and tell them the remnants of the NCR's location, but would end up just blowing up their divide and forcing civil war. Now we have an understanding of the Legion's history and how they work. Now we gotta wonder, how does a group like this function as a society? What is their social roles, their ideology? Well, you get a basic idea of that since they overall are a military force and a very militaristic society. That's pretty much they're a slave army of people owned by Caesar who were forced into this culture or they would have certainly died. Most people in the Legion have been conquered by Caesar and stripped of their previous selves and are now just a legionary. Their main goal is survival and long-term stability, with Caesar seeing democracy as flawed. Democracy is filled with corruption. Caesar was inspired by the ancient Rome's militarized autocracy. They took the cultures they conquered and made them Roman. He saw this a perfect fit for the post-war they lived in. By convincing the legionaries of this higher ideal of life, he stopped society from fracturing within. The Legion adapted nationalist, imperialist, totalitarian, and homogeneous cultures. By doing this, they destroy the identity of every group conquered and stamp theirs onto them. People are either an instrument of war or production, nothing more. There are a bunch of aggressive psychopaths, so how do they even get along with each other? Well, they are under one vision, Caesar's vision, and they rely on a very strict hierarchy of division of roles based on sex. Legionaries are the Legion's fighting force. They either were enslaved by the Legion or born within. Their only purpose is to fight or fall in battle. Within their reconditioning or upbringing, this is set into their brains. This makes them fanatically loyal, opposite of the Romans. Experience and veteran status means nothing in the Legion. Yes, they gain better equipment as they gain rank, but that's purely for accomplishment through more dangerous complexity, with very little tolerance for any failure. There is no freedom. The only choice the legionaries face is when and where they will die for Caesar's cause. We get the women. They are forbidden from fighting. They play the role of caretaker, healers, midwives, breeders, and currency at times to reward legionaries. They are essential to the Legion's campaign, even acting as priestess raising children adopted into the Legion to follow Caesar's doctrine. A lot of the Legion express misogynistic opinions on women. What a shocker. The Legion as a whole justify their sexist segregation as the best way to maximize their own potential. By taking them fully out of combat roles, they maximize their full potential of bearing children, which is already hard enough to do with the low technology and no medical care. Caesar sees this as the best way to maximize his army and ever expand it. In order to maximize breeding with the Legion, Caesar even outright banned act of homosexuality and made it a capital offense. Now, this isn't factually correct, as the Brotherhood of Steel and NCR believe they're a lot like their Roman counterpart, with the homosexuality being very present within their military. Seemingly open gay relationships are a don't ask, don't tell basis, and in New Vegas, Veronica even states that they mount their soldiers as much as they mount their women. If you outright tell Cass that you are gay, she says that you have a Legion outlook on things. Major Knight even says the Legion are a little more forgiving about those kinds of friendships. The Legion has a very distinct style, as well as ranking system for their order. Caesar based their style off the Roman Empire, for which none of his people even knew about, so they just think this is unique and that he created it. So we start with the Legion flag. It has a gold bull on a red background and hangs vertically, unlike every other faction's flag. The flag is based on the Lego ex equestris. These words are rough. 1 denarius, the silver coin basically, is worth 4 bottle caps, and 1 aureus, the gold coins, are worth 100 bottle caps. One of the coins shows Caesar, Josh Graham, and Bill Calhoun and their journey to the canyon, which is the only proof left really of Graham adding to the ghost stories of the Burn Man. The denarius has the inscriptions Caesar Dictator, meaning absolute ruler, and the aureus Magnum Chasma, meaning great abyss. Their language is odd, as Caesar has taught them a mix of Latin and English. A lot of them like to exaggerate Latin pronunciations for even English words. They're just a little bit dramatic if you haven't noticed yet. Religion is also important to the Legion, as Caesar enforces a cult-like mentality with the cult of Mars, a Roman-based cult of personality where, you guessed it, they worship Caesar as the son of Mars. And that started in 2250 when Caesar was ordered by Mars to conquer all of Earth, supposedly. That's what he tells them. To do this, Mars cleansed the earth with fire, and now it's Caesar's divine duty to bring the wasteland back from chaos. Following Caesar means following the will of Mars, and anyone who disobeys this will be punished by death. Children of slaves are also taken and indoctrinated by the priestess of Mars. They are made legionaries to believe that this is the only path. The only problem with this education is most wastelanders have a basic education as is, and already kind of know what they're doing, but the followers of Apocalypse pose a certain threat of exposure to the Legion, where the Legion's education is very simple-minded and focused cult-like, where the followers of Apocalypse would expose that everything that Caesar has told them is fake. And on Caesar's command, those who are found are often murdered on sight and sent to Legion interrogators. Their military is based of post-Marian reform Imperial legions. This means Caesar leads them with his chosen legate, that being his military leader. The legion is also divided into groups of 480 men, 6 centurii, a group of 80 men led by their centurion. This is then divided into 10 contubernia of 8 men, which is led by a decanus. The centurii are a bigger group more prone to battles, while the contubria are a smaller squad used for skirmishes and harassment. You earn the rank that you get by experience and merit in combat. The legionaries with the least experience are put in the front lines of combat to test their skills. Those who survive become prime legionaries and are eligible for command as a decanus. This means they can be deployed for a second wave of attack. The highest rank of these legionaries being the veterans. These have the privilege of the third wave at the rear guard and are only deployed if the first 2 waves fail. This means that when the enemies are tired and at their weakest state, they have to fight fresh legionnaire veterans, and veterans who prove themselves find that they are eligible be a centurion status, which is some of the most deadly and commanding members of the legion. To be a centurion is to be forged through fire of battle. Their armor reflects that, as their armor is made up of trophies collected from their fallen enemies. Though they very rarely enter battle, as they are skilled leaders of few number and are important to lead their units. Now, these being the main legion branches, they have special roles outside of these branches for certain purposes. The Vixilarios carry the legion flag into battle. The Frumentari are the legion's intelligence service, and they are tasked with infiltration, subterfuge, reconnaissance, and the other covert operations, and they serve as Caesar's eyes and ears. The Praetorians are Caesar's elite and hand-chosen bodyguards, chosen to defend not only him, but his legates too. Now, hopefully I pronounced everything right. Legion words, man, are not easy, but this was my summary of Fallout's Legion and their lore. These people are the most organized mess of creatures I've ever seen. Like, I don't know how you stand these people. I don't understand the fan base simpering for the Legion. They are awful humans. They're well written, but like out of joking, I am excited to see where they go in their messed up way as the series continues on with the Fallout TV show. Yeah. If you have any questions, any video ideas, recommendations, please feel free to put them in the comments below. Like, subscribe, turn on that bell for more, and I'll see you all next video. Geek out.